The blinding flash of cameras hit Charlie like a physical blow as she slammed the car door shut. Julia's hand found hers, immediately squeezing tight in silent solidarity, but the tremor in her fingers betrayed the fear they both felt. This was supposed to be their moment of triumph, returning to the sprawling Texas ranch that had once been their home, now as the primary investors in the multimillion-dollar eco-development project that would save the failing family land from foreclosure. But the crowd of reporters and the furious faces of their former family members lining the driveway said otherwise. "Charlie, Julia, is it true you're here to steal the family legacy?" a reporter shouted, shoving a microphone forward. Charlie kept her jaw-locked, eyes straight ahead, guiding Julia through the chaos toward the wide porch where their father stood waiting. 10 years had carved deep lines into his face, but the steel in his glare hadn't softened one bit. At 32, Charlie still felt like the rebellious teenager who had been dragged into this family when her mother married Julia's father. Julia at 30 walked beside her with the same quiet grace that had once made Charlie fall hopelessly in love, despite every warning that loving your stepsister was unforgivable. The wind whipped across the dry pasture, carrying the scent of mesquite and old memories. Horizon Developments, their company, had won the bid fair and square after the bank nearly foreclosed on the 500-acre property that had been in the Hale family since the 1800s. Charlie and Julia had poured every penny and every late night into building that empire from a tiny Brooklyn apartment after the night their father threw them out in the pouring rain. "Get out of my house, you disgusting pair," he had roared while their stepmother sobbed and their half-brother watched in silence. The scandal had spread through Willow Creek like wildfire. 2 girls raised as sisters caught kissing in the barn, the local paper running headlines that still made Charlie's stomach twist. They had left with nothing but each other and the clothes on their backs. Now the same porch creaked under their boots. "You have no right to be here," their father spat, his voice shaking with the same rage from a decade ago. "This land is cursed because of what you two did." Charlie stepped forward, voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. "Actually, Dad, we do. The bank approved the investment. We're here to save it, not destroy it." Before he could answer, a lawyer in a crisp suit stepped out from the crowd, pressing a thick envelope into Charlie's hand. "Ms. Reynolds, Ms. Hale, you've been served. The family is suing to block the project on grounds of conflict of interest, emotional distress, and undue influence." The words landed like a slap. Julia's breath caught her free hand, rising instinctively to her chest. Cameras clicked louder. Charlie felt the ground tilt, but she forced a calm smile for the lenses. "We'll see you in court then." Inside the old house, the air smelled of lemon polish and regret. Their half-brother Ethan waited in the living room, arms crossed. "You really had to come back and rub it in, didn't you?" he muttered. Julia's eyes filled, but she didn't speak. Charlie pulled her closer, knowing every decision from here on would be life or death for their reputation, their company, and the love that had survived everything. That night in the cheap motel on the edge of town, Julia finally broke. "What if they're right, Charlie? What if coming back just destroys us all over again?" Charlie held her tight, staring at the ceiling where shadows danced like old accusations. She had no answer yet, but she knew one thing. Silence had cost them 10 years. Courage might cost them everything else. The next morning, the local news ran the headline, "Disgraced Daughters Return to Steele Family Ranch." Their phones exploded with messages, some supportive, most vicious. Charlie's assistant in New York texted that 3 major investors were already nervous about the bad press. Julia's hand shook as she read the comments, calling them homewreckers and sinners. The project groundbreaking was scheduled in 48 hours, and the family had already filed an emergency injunction. Charlie stood at the window watching the sunrise paint the fields gold, the same fields where she and Julia had first whispered their feelings at 17. Back then, love had felt worth any price. Now, with millions on the line, and the entire town watching, she wondered if she still believed that. Julia came up behind her, resting her chin on Charlie's shoulder. "We fight together, or we walk away together. No middle ground." Charlie turned, kissing her softly, the only piece they had left. "Then we fight." But as they drove to the site for the first survey meeting, a black SUV with tinted windows followed too close. Charlie glanced in the rearview, heart racing. The past wasn't done with them yet. The SUV stayed glued to their bumper all the way to the south pasture, where surveyors already waited with orange flags. Charlie gripped the wheel, knuckles white, forcing herself to focus on the road instead of the rearview. Julia sat rigid beside her, scrolling through the latest news alerts on her phone. They're saying we seduced each other to get control of the land like some twisted scheme, she whispered, voice cracking. Ethan just gave an interview calling us predators. Charlie pulled into the dirt lot beside the old barn, the same barn where everything had started. 10 years ago on a rainy night just like the one they were thrown out, they had hidden here, sharing their first real kiss after years of stolen glances and guilty longing. Now the barn stood weathered but still standing, a silent witness. The surveyors waved, but their smiles faltered when they saw the trailing SUV parked 20 yards away, and 2 men with cameras climb out. Ignore them, Charlie said, taking Julia's hand as they stepped into the morning heat. The lead surveyor, a woman named Maria, handed them hard hats and clipboards. The environmental impact report is clean, but the family's injunction could delay groundbreaking by months if the judge sides with them. Maria lowered her voice. Word is your father's claiming you used insider family knowledge from growing up here. Is that true? Julia's cheeks burned. We haven't set foot on this land in 10 years. Everything we know came from public records and our own research. But the accusation stung because part of it felt true. They did remember every creek, every fence line, every childhood secret buried in these fields. As they walked the property line reviewing soil samples and water rights, the following cameraman shouted questions. Julia, did you always want your stepsister, or was it after you both came out? Charlie, how does it feel to profit off the family that disowned you? Charlie's jaw tightened, but she kept walking. One wrong word could tank their company stock, which had already dipped 3% overnight. Back at the temporary office trailer, their lawyer called. The lawsuit includes a demand for emotional damages, $2 million. They're also petitioning to freeze your company assets pending trial. Charlie sank into a folding chair, head in hands. Horizon Developments employed 40 people, most of whom had no idea about her past. Losing this project could mean layoffs, pink slips, ruined lives. Julia paced the small space, tears threatening. Maybe we should just drop it. Walk away. Let them keep the land. Charlie looked up, meeting her eyes. And go back to hiding? 10 years ago we chose each other over everything. If we back down now, what was the point of surviving? The debate stretched into the afternoon, interrupted only by a process server delivering more papers. Outside, the media had grown to a dozen vans. By dusk, Charlie and Julia slipped out the back, heading to the only place they still felt safe, the small diner on the highway, where no one knew their faces yet. Over coffee and pie, Julia finally voiced the fear they both carried. What if loving me costs you your career this time? Charlie reached across the table, lacing their fingers. Then I'll build another one. But I won't lose you again. That night in the motel, the phone rang. It was their stepmother, voice trembling. Please, girls. Your father's had another heart scare. The stress of all this just dropped the project. For family. Julia hung up, shaking. Charlie held her through the tears, knowing the next decision could break more than hearts. Morning brought worse news. Their New York office reported that 2 board members had resigned, citing reputational risk. The stock dropped another 5%. And the black SUV was back, parked across the street, watching. Charlie stared at it from the window, fists clenched. The past wasn't just knocking, it was kicking the door down. The emergency board meeting happened over video at 6 a.m. Charlie sat on the motel bed, laptop balanced on her knees, while Julia hovered behind her, out of frame. The remaining directors looked grim. We support you personally, Charlie, but the optics are killing us. Major clients in Texas are threatening to pull contracts if we stay attached to this scandal. The chairman leaned forward. Drop the Willow Creek project. Walk away clean. We can pivot to the Colorado deal instead. Charlie's throat tightened. The Colorado deal was safe, boring, and nowhere near the land that had defined their pain and their victory. Julia's hand rested on her shoulder, silent support. I hear you, Charlie said, voice even. But walking away now hands the family exactly what they want, our silence. Again. The call ended with a warning. 48 hours to decide, or the board would force a vote. Julia sank beside her. I can't ask you to risk everything for me. Charlie pulled her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo. You're not asking. I'm choosing. They drove to the hospital that afternoon to check on their father despite everything. The waiting room smelled of antiseptic and old grudges. Ethan met them at the door, arms crossed. He doesn't want to see you. Neither do I. But their stepmother slipped out, eyes red. He's stable, but the doctor said any more stress. She looked at Julia, the daughter she had raised. Please. For him. Outside in the parking lot, Julia broke down. What if he dies because of us? Charlie held her tight, cameras flashing from across the street. The headline the next morning read, Lesbian investors harass dying father at hospital. Their lawyer called furious. This is turning into a PR nightmare. The judge is reviewing the injunction today. That evening they met Maria at the site for one last walkthrough before the possible delay. The sun dipped low, painting the fields in gold and shadow. Julia stopped at the old oak where they had carved their initials at 19, hidden from everyone. Remember when we thought love would be enough? Charlie traced the faded letters. It still is. Just more expensive now. A sudden screech of tires made them both spin. The black SUV roared up the dirt road, stopping inches from them. Two men jumped out, one with a camera, the other holding a microphone. Julia, sources say you caused your father's heart attack. Care to comment? Julia backed up, stumbling. Charlie stepped between them. Leave her alone. The scuffle happened fast. The cameraman shoved Charlie, grabbed Julia's arm. She cried out. Charlie swung without thinking, fist connecting with the man's jaw. Sirens wailed in the distance. By the time the deputy arrived, Julia was shaking and Charlie's knuckles bled. The men claimed assault. Charges were threatened. Back at the motel, Julia bandaged Charlie's hand, tears falling. This is exactly what I was afraid of. Protecting me is destroying you. Charlie kissed her forehead. No. Giving up would destroy us both. The next morning the judge granted a temporary injunction halting all work. Their company stock plunged 12%. Board members texted ultimatums. And their father's lawyer released a statement calling them greedy predators who would rather kill him than let go. The pressure was now a vice closing from every side. The accident happened on the rain-slicked county road back from an emergency meeting with their lawyer in Austin. Julia drove because Charlie's hand still throbbed from the punch. Headlights cut through the downpour, the wipers slapping rhythmically. We can settle, Julia said quietly. Pay them off. Walk away from the land. Start over somewhere new. Charlie stared at the blurred yellow lines. And let them win. Let every kid in this town think loving who you love means you deserve to lose everything. Before Julia could answer, bright lights flooded the rear view. The same black SUV again, except this time it was speeding. Charlie there. Julia's scream cut off as the SUV rammed their bumper. The car fishtailed. Julia fought the wheel, but the wet asphalt betrayed her. They spun off the road, crashing through a fence and slamming into a ditch. Metal screamed. Airbags exploded. Then silence except for the rain. Charlie came to first, head ringing. Julia. Blood trickled from Julia's temple, but she was breathing. Charlie fumbled for her phone, calling 911, voice shaking. Sirens eventually cut through the storm. Paramedics pulled them out. Julia had a concussion and a broken wrist. Charlie escaped with bruises and a mild whiplash. The SUV was gone, vanished into the night. At the hospital, the deputy took their statement. We're investigating, but no plates caught on camera. Could be random road rage. Charlie knew better. The timing was too perfect right after the injunction. Their lawyer arrived, pale. The family denies involvement, but the timing looks bad. Press is already calling it karma. Julia lay in the hospital bed, wrist in a cast, eyes distant. Maybe it is karma. Maybe we should have stayed silent 10 years ago. Charlie sat beside her, fighting tears. Don't say that. Silence almost killed us then. The board called an emergency vote while Julia slept. Charlie took it in the hallway. We're pulling funding from Willow Creek effective immediately, the chairman said. The stock can't take any more hits. Charlie hung up, feeling the ground disappear beneath her. Their company, the life they had built together, was crumbling. When Julia woke, Charlie told her. Julia stared at the ceiling for a long moment. Then it's over. We lost. Charlie shook her head. Not yet. I still own 49%. I can fight them. But fighting meant risking bankruptcy, personal loans, everything. And Julia's health was already fragile, the doctor warning that stress could trigger worse complications. That night in the hospital room with monitors beeping, Charlie faced the choice she had dreaded. Protect the woman she loved by walking away or protect their future by risking everything including Julia's life. The media camped outside the hospital doors. Their father issued a statement offering forgiveness if they dropped the project. Ethan texted threats of more lawsuits. Julia squeezed Charlie's hand. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. But I can't lose you either. Dawn brought a new crisis. Charlie's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. A photo of their old barn, the one with the carved initials now spray-painted with slurs and the words, "Burn in Hell." Attached was a video of the same SUV from the crash circling the property. The message read, "Back off or next time it's worse." Charlie showed Julia, who paled. "We have to go to the police with this." But their lawyer warned that without proof it could backfire, making them look paranoid. Instead, they decided to hold a press conference from the hospital. Charlie stood at the podium, arm in a sling, Julia beside her in a wheelchair. Cameras flashed. "We came back to save this land, not destroy a family," Charlie said, voice steady. "But someone is trying to stop us with violence and lies. We won't be silenced again." The statement went viral. Supporters flooded social media with "Stand with Charlie and Julia." But the family countered with their own interview, their father in a hospital gown looking frail. "They broke my heart once. Now they're breaking my body." Donations poured into a legal fund against them. Back in their room, Julia turned to Charlie. "I'm scared. Not for me, for you. Your company is everything you built." Charlie cupped her face. "You are everything I built it for." The board meeting that afternoon was brutal. Charlie joined by video from the hospital. "If you force the pullout, I'll buy out every share at personal cost." The room went silent. One director laughed bitterly. "You'll bankrupt yourself." Charlie met their eyes. "Then I will. But I won't let fear win." The vote was split. The company stayed in for now, but the margin was razor thin. Charlie hung up exhausted. Julia watched her with quiet pride. "You chose us." That night the deputy returned with news. The SUV was registered to a private investigator hired by the family's lawyer. Evidence of the ramming was found on traffic cameras. Charges were being filed. For the first time the family looked vulnerable. But victory tasted bitter. Julia's doctor warned that another shock could trigger a breakdown. Their father's condition worsened under the new scrutiny. Ethan left a voicemail full of rage. "You're killing him. Happy now." Charlie sat by Julia's bed holding her hand as rain tapped the window. The project groundbreaking was rescheduled for next week if the injunction lifted. Everything hung on one final court hearing. One decision. Protect the family that had cast them out or protect the love that had saved them. The courtroom in Austin smelled of polished wood and old secrets. Charlie and Julia sat at the defense table, hands linked beneath the table, while their father's side filled the gallery with supporters. The judge reviewed the evidence, the threatening messages, the crash footage, the conflicting claims of insider knowledge. Their lawyer argued passionately that the lawsuit was harassment rooted in bigotry. The family's attorney painted them as greedy opportunists who had manipulated the system. Julia testified first, voice soft but clear. "We never wanted to hurt anyone. We just wanted to come home." Charlie watched her with pride and fear, knowing every word could tip the scales. When it was her turn, Charlie stood tall. 10 years ago we were told our love made us monsters. Today we're being told the same thing in legal language. But this land deserves a future, and so do we. The judge recessed for deliberation. Outside in the hallway, Ethan cornered them. "Dad had another episode last night, because of this circus. If he dies, it's on you." Julia's face crumpled, but Charlie stepped between them. "Then maybe he should have chosen love over pride a long time ago." The ruling came at 4 o'clock. The injunction was lifted. The lawsuit for emotional damages was dismissed with prejudice. The family's claims of undue influence were rejected. Cameras exploded as they stepped outside. Charlie pulled Julia into her arms right there on the courthouse steps, ignoring the flashes. "We did it." But the victory carried scars. Their father refused to speak to them. The company's stock took months to recover. Julia's wrist healed, but nightmares of the crash lingered. Charlie's board remained uneasy. Yet the groundbreaking happened on a bright spring morning, with the entire town watching, some still hostile, many now curious. As the first shovel broke ground, Charlie looked at Julia, the woman she had risked everything for, and smiled. The ancestral land was transforming ribbon-cutting ceremonies, new jobs, eco-homes rising where mesquite once grew. They kept the old barn, restored the carved initials under glass. Some nights they walked the fields hand in hand, talking about the price they had paid: silence versus courage, family versus love. Years later, when the project was thriving and Willow Creek had slowly changed its mind, Charlie stood on the same porch where they had once been thrown out. Julia leaned against her, watching the sunset. The family never fully reconciled, but the land endured. In the end, when love costs you everything, is the courage to speak your truth worth the devastating price? Or would silence have spared you the pain of it all?